All right, everybody, welcome to the next episode of Video Game Collectors on Call. Today we got a very special guest. This is somebody I started watching on TikTok when I first got into, video games and collecting and all that. And kind of, he's been sort of an inspiration for me to kind of get into this and start doing all this. This is Matty Newy.
Hey,
So,
everyone.
Matty, welcome to the show. How's it
Thank you.
going?
Glad to be here.
Excellent. So, the question I like to ask everyone to start off is what got you started in collecting? Where were you like in collecting when you started sort of said, hey, I got to start, showing off my collection, doing all these things to get more games?
So obviously, starting off as a young kid, we all had our video game systems that we had and grew up with. So we grew up with Nintendo. Obviously, that evolved into Super Nintendo, and from there on, PlayStation and so forth. I pretty much kept up with the video games. I am, by phrase, a retro gamer at heart. Like after GameCube.
What does that mean to you? What does retro gaming mean to you?
Well, it's specific to everybody's age group, right? So, like, I'm 40. That's
Okay.
pretty much NES to Super Nintendo and PlayStation One, like that era of games. So, like,
Okay.
late 80s, early 90s, or mid to late 90s. I feel like that's like what true retro is. Obviously, all those systems that came out in the 2000s now are becoming retro, but
Right.
that's kind of a different generation of kids that grew up with those. I look at it as the game that you played kind of like from like 5 to like 15, like that kind of age range
Hmm.
is like your true retro, because that was when your formative years, you're growing up, you're seeing all these games for the first time. Like Atari, like I knew about Atari. My uncles had Atari. I played over my grandmother's house every once in a while, but like that one never really took off for me. It was the
Okay.
NES that was like, wow, this is amazing. I need to play these games.
It's probably yeah the same for me. And now I see people post games, and it's a PS4 game, and they're like, "Look at this retro game I got," and I'm like, "Hold up, wait a minute,
Yes,
PS4 is retro? How old
yeah.
am I?" Like, so that's wild. So, but then you started into like making content and posting things online. When did you get started with all that?
That happened around 2020. So during the pandemic is when kind of everybody got sheltered into their homes. We weren't sure what was going on. I had time off from work, and I was just kind of twiddling my thumbs one day, and I was like, like I have my Nintendo games. I need to pull them out, and kind of what I wound up starting doing in my house was really kind of making a whole little man cave. And
Hmm.
I started pulling out my systems, setting up a TV, and getting everything geared up for playing games. And as I did that, I really enjoy these, and I kind of want to share them with everybody else. So why don't I start, just posting on TikTok or other social medias? And yes, I really, dove in with TikTok and started posting like kind of, do you remember top 5 games that you played on the Nintendo back in the day? And it really gained momentum quick. I don't think anybody really was doing that at the time outside of Nice Gamer. If you know him, he's one of the dudes
Yeah,
that
yeah.
took off and got kind of, I would say he got the biggest out of the retro gaming crew. But I had chatted with him a bunch, and we talked back and forth. So I kind of grew my content talking with him and getting some pointers on TikTok, because he was way more familiar with it than I was at the time. And yeah, that was just kind of like the prime moment for TikTok then too, is just growing during the pandemic. Everybody seemed to be getting it because they were all stuck at home, didn't know what to do either. So I was able
Right.
to share something I loved with as many people as I could, and it reciprocated. It came back, and people were like, "This is amazing! You brought back so many memories. I forgot about this game."
Yeah.
Like there would be ones I'd pull out sometimes and be like, "Oh my god, I thought this was a dream. I played this game. This is great. Thank you so much for showing me this." And that really made me, you know, feel like I needed to take it to another level too. Like I'm kind of a goofy guy, so I had my little parody videos that I did in between with that too. But then like I kind of started looking at it as like, well, I'm kind of almost becoming a video game historian with this now. Like I'm building a library, I'm preserving these games, I'm taking care of them. Like, so I'm also showing people what these are. And it did open up in a way. It went from our age group to opening up to new people that weren't as familiar with the games to joining in there. It was like, oh, I had never seen that before. I want to try that. So I was like, okay, cool. So now we're ushering in and showing like a new generation these games that they might not have seen yet because they're so used to the PlayStation 3s and 4s,
Yeah.
So that was
That's
what was
that's
really neat too.
That's what it's all about. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's definitely. And I, speaking from my experience, I was one of those people who I had friends who watched people play games on Twitch, and I was like, that's just. But why would you watch someone play a game? And then I saw you, and I was like, this is actually kind of cool. This is fun because it wasn't about watching you play. It was more watching you and being able to talk and kind of just, learn. And it was an interactive experience.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing that I set out to do with that. There's streaming. I tried doing OBS style streaming for a minute there, and it just didn't feel natural. It didn't feel like what I really wanted to do. When I started live streaming, I literally just pointed my camera phone at the TV and just went with it. So nobody could see me. You just saw the picture of the game, and it was me just chatting. So I could read the chat easier as well. And I wanted to make it a really safe place to like come and hang out, kind of like it did when you were a kid. Like you go over to your friend's house and you play video games, you have a pizza, and it'd be a Friday night or whatever. And I wanted to really build on that and engage with people as much as I could and get that friendly feeling like you are at your friend's house playing this game right now. And I took that and ran with it, and I felt like that was such a fun way to live stream that it kind of really took on its own thing at that point.
Yeah, I feel that kids these days won't have that experience, which is kind of sad, of going to someone's house, having a sleepover, hooking up 4 TVs or I don't know if you were into Halo at all and had any LAN parties.
So
that kind
I
of
wasn't
stuff.
part of the LAN party crew.
Okay.
Like obviously I had friends in high school and stuff that did LAN parties in college. It's funny because Halo was one of those ones that like passed me by. I was, for a minute there, wasn't that drawn in by the sci-fi games. So like if you're doing like, space and aliens, like I was like, Like Metroid was like kind of like the only game that I ever played that would like really interest me with that. Dead Space came around. And then Dead Space was like that Resident Evil style. I was like, ooh.
Yeah.
I was like, that's where I'm at. I'm all about like the survival horror games. So when I saw that, I was like, okay, let's get some sci-fi going on in here. And that kind of changed me up.
I have not played Dead Space actually, but I know
Really?
I need to because I'm a big fan of Resident Evil, so that's definitely something I need to check out.
Definitely.
I
definitely.
So you talked about your golden age of gaming, I guess you could call it, with NES and then maybe up to the PlayStation 1. So are those the things you're collecting, or are you also collecting outside of that, maybe Atari and PS4 and stuff like that?
So pretty much I am trying to get my hands on every system.
Okay.
I have, like, speaking of Ataris, I've got a 2600, I've got the 5200, and for the Nintendos, I got pretty much all those systems working their way up, including the handhelds. TurboGrafx was a big one that was fond to me growing up because my uncle had one, which is actually, that's the one I have right now. So I would go over to my grandmother's house and play the TurboGrafx a lot. So I got really into that. I've got a small collection back here of TurboGrafx games, but those are really kind of rare and expensive. So it takes a good minute to start building up that collection. But yeah, it's kind of all around. I go through like phases right now of mostly, like I said, I collect NES. I want to try to get a full set of that. Am I going to get a full set of that? Probably not, because there's some of those games are just way overpriced these days.
Sure.
But it's kind of like the thrill of the hunt with that. Like, so like I said, like if I'm scouring the internet or going to garage sales or Facebook Marketplace and those things, and I see a deal on something that's in like the range of stuff I collect, like I'll go and try to grab that. Like that's how I picked up a couple TurboGrafx games for a good price. Genesis stuff, I scored a couple of good deals with some Genesis games and got a whole bulk lot of items with that. But yeah, it all kind of rotates around as I'm traveling through, this whole collector, the collector sphere, as I like to call it.
Sure. So are you collecting any of the obscure systems that maybe no one's ever heard of? Like I think is Vectrek, is that what it's called? There's one.
Yeah.
Vec something.
Yeah. Oh, Vectrek.
Like things like that. Yeah.
So those are ones that I'm a little conflicted on collecting. Like it's one of those ones where like I'm not too familiar with it. Would it be nice to have? Yes, but like I'm not going to grab it unless like it falls into my lap. Like if I happen to be somewhere and it's like this amazing deal, then I'll be like, oh, I'll get that obscure system that nobody's ever heard of that I'll probably never touch, and maybe I'll put it up on the shelf here for display. But yeah, like I'm not necessarily seeking after the really obscure stuff that much. I do predominantly chase after the NES games right now and slowly building up some Super Nintendo stuff in the background, as you see here. Mostly it's NES is all right there. That's the catalog I have.
Okay.
I do have duplicate games and stuff that I kind of started as a little side thing of refurbishing and kind of selling those, so I can kind of keep everything in a constant state of motion for collecting. Like what I was doing for a while was buying a bulk lot of games, like some of the games that I might have had already. But so I purchased the bulk to get the couple of rarer games that were in that lot that I didn't have. And it's kind of like a trading up in quality for them too. Like sometimes like you'd be able to score like a better condition game for like say Adventure Island. Like I had a beat up copy of Adventure Island. I'd get a lot of games to get the cleaner copy, clean up the old one, and see if anybody else would want that, and kind of still have the money returning back into my funds for building. So yeah. It's a kind of a fun like little side thing to do, and I find it very therapeutic to just sit back and take the games apart and clean them and try to see if I can get them to work first try. So we're not sitting there blowing on the carts like we all did when we were kids and putting all our spin on them.
Yeah. Do you collect anything else besides games and consoles, or just random other things maybe?
I do have stuff that like I said, it kind of is like a little like bit of going through phases. Like I'll get kind of attracted to comic books. I did for a while when I was younger, so I've got a lot of comic books that I've kind of framed up and built around the room kind of as display. Figures like NECA toys, sometimes I go, and if it's a good line of stuff, I'll try to collect those as well. Mostly like horror figures. Like I go after like the Friday the 13th stuff and
okay.
Back to the Future the stuff that was all like movies and games that I saw when I was younger. Yeah, Gambit cool. Stuff. Like, I got the Gambit posters, some Ghostbusters stuff.
Ghostbusters, yeah.
Yeah, big Ghostbusters fan.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Classic movie. Ghostbusters, Indiana Jones, Back to the Future. Those are all, during our time. Have you played the new Indiana Jones, by the way?
I have on Game Pass. I haven't bought it yet for myself. I'm going to wait for it to come out for PlayStation in the spring, but it is fantastic. Have you played it?
I have. I'm about an hour or two in, maybe. And
yeah, I would say
so far it's enjoyable. Yeah.
I didn't have that much time to mess around with it, but I love that they pulled from the movie for the intro to kind of learn how to move Indiana around. And I thought that was awesome. Yeah, like pretty much a frame for frame recreation too, which was fantastic. So I feel like they hit the nail on the head with this. I was a little skeptical about it being first person. Mm-hmm. And then as I played it, I was like, no, I'm Indiana Jones right now. Like this is everything that I've dreamed of watching the movies is to be Indiana in the moment through first person. And I want more. Like it was that good.
Right. Well, it's fun. It's funny because my wife does not play video games. She's not a video gamer. She goes to the other room when I'm playing. But Indiana Jones, she's a huge fan of, and she has a huge crush on Harrison Ford. And always has. And so she watches me play that game. So that's great, and I think they did something right there.
Yeah, that's great, and that's bonding right there too, which is awesome. Yeah, being able to have the significant other sitting back and playing with you, or at least watching, is something.
Oh, absolutely. How do you display your collection now? So for me, I put everything alphabetical, and then group it by system. Obviously, do you do something similar?
That's pretty much what I'm doing here right now. It's alphabetical order, bookcase style, and I go through all the systems. So I have everything broken up and kind of chunking its way down from Nintendo to PlayStation. It's a little sporadic on one side because I'm still figuring out what's the best look is. Right. So like I'll stack everything up and be like, oh, this looks great, and then like a week later be like, I need this to be a little bit less chaotic. But
do you worry about running out of space? Because for instance, I just bought a new bookshelf so we're in a house right now that has very limited space, but we will be moving soon. But I'm just in a little bedroom that's very small, and I have a couple bookshelves, and I had to buy a new one because I've run out of space. The worst feeling is when you buy a new game, but then you have to remove one from one shelf, put it on the next, move to the. You know what I'm talking about?
Yes,
where you're transitioning the shelves.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've been there, done that. I moved. It's been a couple of years now, but when we moved here, I had to take everything down that was in the apartment I was in, and that was like going through that whole process again. And then I picked up a whole bunch of games. I'm like, oh, I just did this, and now I'm, it'll go a little while. The room looks good in the video. There is a little bit of clutter in the background of stuff that still needs to get put out.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I feel like that's kind of part of the fun of it. Obviously, we all get busy in life, and you don't always have time for the game room, especially if you have family and work and everything. So when you do have those moments to kind of just sit back and even just catalog a few things, it's a lot of fun and relaxing. So I I like the controlled chaos of it. And will it be one day, totally set? I kind of hope not. I want to always be working on it and growing it. And to your question of, do I worry about running out of space? Yes. I'm constantly looking at this room and being like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have gone so ridiculous with these arcade one-ups.
Yeah. You're going to have to put stuff on the ceiling, like you just cover the walls everywhere.
I don't know if you know Lost in the 80s and 90s, Will.
I do know that page.
Yeah, he is what I fear my room is going to turn into at some point because he's a little bit older than us, a fantastic guy, has pretty much like floor to ceiling everything. Like he has arcade one-up games. He was showing me, he's like, yeah, Matt, like what you should do is you should put these spacer shelves that I built in between the arcade one-ups to put more stuff on it. And I was looking at it, he was showing me, I was like, oh, that is a good idea. Like I could kind of wedge them in between.
I mean, Matty, I don't see a problem with your room turning into that. You know what I mean? It's like, that
I don't
sounds like
either. My wife might have a problem with
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's always the wife's. Yeah, that's true.
No, just kidding. She is absolutely fantastic and supports me 100% with it. I feel like that's like the joke that everybody goes for, but yeah, this room, I worry about it looking a little too much. Like I don't want to get like hoarder status with it, but I want everything to have a purpose. Like I want, I also want it to just be stuff that I'm going to use. I don't want it to be things that I collected and then never touched. Like if it comes to like the figures and figurines and stuff like that, okay, that's something that you purchase and then it's on a static display, but you're looking at it. You're walking up to it and you're like, all right, this is really cool. Everything else I want to be hands-on with and be able to be like, I'm going to pull that game off the shelf and play this today. And I want to be able to let my kids be able to like, hey, Dad, can we play this one? Yeah, sure. Let's go play some Super Mario Brothers 3 and just fire up the TV without worry.
So the room you're in is basically your one dedicated room in your house, and it's just for video games. Nothing else in that room. It's okay. That's cool.
Yeah, it's video games and like I said, my collectibles and stuff like that.
Sure. Gotcha.
So like I said, I want it to be kind of like the family fun room. Are the kids as into it with the older games? No, not really yet, but they have shown like the arcade one-ups are kind of like bridging the gap with that because they'll be like, oh, let's play Ninja Turtles. And I'll be like, yeah, sure. So we'll fire up the 4-player Ninja Turtles and play that for a little bit, which is a lot of fun.
That's awesome.
Every once in a while. Same thing with the Simpsons cab, which is a lot of fun.
I spent so much money on that arcade cabinet when I was younger, the Simpsons.
Same.
That was a classic. And then I could never find it until Arcade 1-Up came out with their version of it.
Yeah, I think when they announced that one, I did a video with the Michael Scott dubbed over, like, this is it! It's happening! It's finally happening!
Yeah, no, that was huge. So you talked about wanting to be able to, it sounds like to me you've played everything on your shelf, but correct me if I'm wrong. Are there things on your shelf you've never touched or played?
There are a lot of things on the shelf that I haven't played.
Okay.
The games I grew up with are the ones that I still play the most. Like I've collected, there's like anything, games that, you collect that might not be the best game. It's just that, it's part of trying to get the full set. My goal is to play through at least all of them once. So like I just have a huge backlog, obviously picked up in life at work and having kids and stuff like that. So your backlog constantly grows.
Right.
And there's always like newer games coming out too. Like, I'll sit down with the kiddos and I'll be playing some new stuff on PlayStation or whatever, just to see what that is. And do I have time to throw on the Nintendo game? Oh, not necessarily. But yeah, there's a large portion of the games that I haven't played. The rarer titles that I never had a chance growing up, like playing like Mighty Final Fight. As soon as I got my hands on a copy of that, I threw that in the Nintendo and I had to play it.
Sure, yeah.
But yeah, so like there's backlog. I have DuckTales 2, which, at first getting into it, like I didn't even know there was a DuckTales 2. I knew there was DuckTales 1. And then I heard that there was a sequel. I was like, well, I got to get my hands on that. So yeah, and it's all stuff that I kind of, stuff that I want to play. But here's the interesting thing when you start making content is that, do I want to play it and experience it genuinely for myself for the first time, or do I want to try to play this game that I've never played before on a live stream so everybody else can see it? And I feel like there's that interesting factor that starts coming up now when you're a content creator of it's like, I haven't played this game before. Do I want to experience this like kind of like how it was when I was growing up and I got the game for the first time? Because it is the first time I'm playing it. I just never played it you
Right.
know, before. So yeah, and then there's also a little fear too that you're going to play it and be terrible at it and not know what's going on. So everybody's going to
Like when when you're streaming. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, so you have that kind of like stage fright about doing that. It's like, oh, I'm not so sure I want to do this right now.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's fair. Where do you purchase the items in your collection? Are there retro game stores around you? Do you go to eBay? Do you use Facebook Marketplace? What's your main source?
All of that. I wouldn't say necessarily that there's a main source anymore. It's just really a lot of searching around and hunting, like going through everything online, eBay, Marketplace, Craigslist. The shadier, the better. Like there's a lot of times it's changed a lot too since the pandemic. So like there used to be able to go on Facebook Marketplace and Craigslist and stuff like that and see legit deals and be able to just trade games with people and go and buy stuff. Now it's a lot of fake accounts and a lot of stolen images I'm finding from people that have just sold something. So like if it deals with any online payment, I'm always wary of it. And I'm
Right.
kind of, I don't think I'm going to do this. But there was a lot of person to person meeting that I did early on that was great because it would be like, oh, I'm selling this Nintendo with like 20 games. Like you just come out with the money. I'd be like, all right. So I drove down. I'd go and pick it up and have a conversation with the person, kind of learn a little bit about what they did with it when they were a kid.
Yeah, no, that's
And,
great.
like that was fun. But those days are kind of few and far between now.
But yeah, I notice a lot less sales or items for sale on Facebook Marketplace and even eBay. I think the prices are so high these
Yeah.
days, but we can talk about that later. But speaking of prices, if you're going to buy something, how do you personally determine if it's a good price? What do you use as your metric?
I have an app called. I have a couple things. I do price charting. I look at
Okay.
that.
Okay.
I kind of average out. I have Retro Game Collector is the app that I use that catalog stuff.
Okay.
And what
I've
that
not
does
heard of
is,
that one. Yeah.
yeah, it's really fun. There's a one-time charge for it. I don't know if that's changed, but I bought like the subscription, which is forever. So you pay, I think it was like $15, and you have it forever, and it automatically adds all the consoles you want to it. So like they're constantly updating it and adding new pictures, but they track eBay and a couple other things, if I recall correctly. So they'll show you live eBay auctions for the game you're looking for to try to track it down at a better price. And it kind of does that. So I'll watch that for a little while. If there's a game that's on my radar that I want to pick up, I'll track price charting for a little bit and then kind of decide then of like what my price point is to get into an auction with. So like I'll be like, there are higher price games that I've picked up and I've gotten deals on, but there's also those higher price games that you kind of just have to bite the bullet and pay what the asking
Right.
is.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all like I said. Like it kind of gets back to a little bit of a thrill to hunt in that aspect. I enjoy hunting for them and doing that deal hunting. So if I'm
Hmm.
ever able to come across something and get it at a deal price, like that's the exciting thrill for it. I
Yeah.
mean, at the end of the day, if I really wanted to, like I could pay that price for a game. But do I want to do that? No.
Yeah. 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 Exactly. No, I hear you. So, but you also sell your games you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Now, do you do the same thing when you sell it? Do you look on those sites and say, how much should I sell this for and what's the going price?
Yeah, I look at what the going price is, and I've watched a couple of people that I've, interacted with and bought and sold games with what they do. And I try to look at price charting, figure out what shipping costs are, and try to adjust that so my shipping winds up being free for the person that's buying it. So like I want it to so like I'll knock off the price by like $5 to $10 so that way it looks like it's the price starting price, I guess you'd say, but they're getting the free shipping out of it, so they're actually saving some money on the game. So it's just kind of one of those things where you have to follow the market though and like manipulate that constantly, which is hard when I have my little website because I'll set a price for a while and obviously with the supply and demand of the collector market, like those prices will fluctuate. So I have to constantly go back and be like, all right, well, this one's kind of on sale now. Shipping is included.
So you
And
said
I,
had your website. Do you no longer have the website?
I do have the website. I might have misspoke with that. I like
Oh, okay.
it's it's there. I just am not updating it as much as I want to right now,
Gotcha.
just because I've been
Gotcha.
so
Okay.
busy. But it's
Okay.
still there because my merch page is up on that and everything too. But yeah, so it's a tricky thing. And
And
that's kind
these
of no. Go ahead.
and these are games that you've refurbished, like you've cleaned up and kind of so some of the time, right? Yeah. Where did you
Yeah,
learn to kind of do all that at?
YouTube and just kind of starting out on my own. Like I bought a couple of games that were that, and then that kind of is where, don't want to jump around too much, but right where the deal making is too, for like getting a game that's rarer for a better price. Like I got a couple of games that were pretty beat up looking and it looked like they were trashed. And what I wound up doing was taking them apart, cleaning them all up, and they work perfectly and look like they just came out of the box, which is great.
That was going to be my next question was, does that deter you from buying a game if it has a huge sticker across the label, maybe some marker on it? And
that makes it more of a challenge and more fun. Like I got one time a Tailspin for Nintendo. I picked up at one of the local stores and it had a giant Blockbuster sticker right across the label. And I was, I kind of haggled with the price a little bit with it. I was like, try to get it down a couple more bucks. And Tailspin's not that expensive a game anyway, but that was kind of like just the fun of it too. It's be like, dude, it's got a giant Blockbuster sticker on it. This looks like trash. Like, like, come on, let's take another $1 or $2 off of it. And then we wound up doing it. So
wow.
So like that was fun in and of itself. And then I took it home and very methodically worked on the sticker and was able to get it off. And it looks fantastic. Actually, Tiny Toon Disney's Tailspin. Where is it? T-E-T. I think I might have lost it in my collection for a second here. Yeah.
Is it under D for Disney?
It could be under D for Disney. Yeah. Hold on, let's say.
Yeah, no worries.
No, I have to find it.
You're good.
Disney's Tailspin. Darkwing Duck. Deja Vu.
We can just edit all this dead space.
That's going to drive me nuts, actually. I'm going to have to find it and do a post on it now in a second. I don't want to be just you guys.
I know, now you're worried. Yeah, you're going to have anxiety the whole rest of this conversation worrying about where your Tailspin is.
I actually might. DuckTales. Yeah. But anyway, it's all right. It should be.
Okay.
It should be right there.
All right. Well, let's change the topic. Let's get away from restoration there. So give me, what is your most prized possession? That can be like a game that has significant meaning to you, maybe your most expensive, something that just has a lot of memories. What would that be?
That so many people ask me that. It's like it really is at the end of the day one of the tougher, if not toughest, questions I'm asked. And I would have to say, just from a video gaming standpoint, it's not price. It's Resident Evil on the PlayStation 1. That game was very influential to me. I remember when I saw some gameplay of it, I was like, I have to get a PlayStation for that. And I had saved up my money all summer just to go and get that PlayStation.
That's so weird. Yeah, that's so weird because the same is for me.
Really?
Resident Evil was the first game, and you're a little bit older than I am by a couple years, and I couldn't get it because of the rating, you know, and so I had to, have my brother, I think, is who got it for me, because he was older and my parents wouldn't let me have it, but he got it, and then so that was definitely for me the same.
Yeah, it's it's funny. It's because I don't know if it was at the time I was like getting big into zombie movies and stuff, but I just remember seeing that game and I was like, this is so cool. It's like and that's the thing that everybody says, every generation of systems. This is as real as this is going to get. This is amazing. Yeah. I can't believe these graphics. And I think just the 3D character walking around in this, pre-rendered building just captivated me. And I was just blown away by it and I had to play it. And I played that game back and forth, left and right, like hundreds of hours probably. I still go back to this day and do live streams on it and, play the different scenarios. I think the only thing at the end of the day, I'm not a completionist. So I don't think I ever fully went through it and tried to get all of the unlocks on any of the Resident Evils. But
that's fair. Yeah.
I just enjoy the story.
Sure.
And the gameplay for it. I don't need to have the infinite rocket launcher just because.
Yeah, that just is silly, right? So
yeah.
But when it comes to something like Resident Evil 2, obviously you've beat all the, scenario A, scenario B, and that kind of stuff, right? Yeah. So that's all that matters, I think. But Resident Evil is by far, my favorite series of all time. So that's definitely a good memory for me.
I have a question for you, and this is probably a very decisive question.
Okay.
The Resident Evil 3 remake, yay or nay?
The Resident Evil 3, I liked it. Yeah, no, I thought it was good. I thought there were parts of it that were a little, they added in and made it a little different, which was nice. The same with, I think all the Resident Evil remakes have been good. But the original was really nice, honestly. Something about the original, I like that one better. I didn't hate the remake, but I think the remake was still reasonably well done. So.
Yes. Yeah, a lot of things were cut from it. Like, I can see why people are mad with it. A lot of people hate that game with a passion. And I enjoyed it. I was just a little disappointed because I wanted more city exploration that the original game had. And I felt like we were just kind of on rails the whole time. I thought that the character arcs that they added into it were a lot better.
Yeah.
I thought that was really well done. I really like the fact that they took Brad and kind of gave him that savior arc, or not savior arc, redemption arc for having left them, with the helicopter. But if you look at Resident Evil as a storyline, he leaves them, but he's the one that comes back and saves them at the end anyway. So he's really a more interesting character than people want to believe, because you have this guy that's supposed to be afraid of everything. Okay, he did fly off, but then he, conquers his fear and like flies up to the monster and gives you the rocket launcher at the end of the first game. So he kind of comes in clutch. That's true.
I mean, he is in a helicopter way above you, away from the monster, but credit where credit is due, I guess. But no, that's a great franchise. So, in a follow-up question, maybe, what is your most memorable gaming moment? And what I mean by that, let me give you my example. So I can remember playing Resident Evil Code Veronica for the Dreamcast when I was probably 12 or 13, maybe, somewhere around that age. And I knew nothing about the game. There were no strategy guides that I had. We didn't have the internet to look up how to play it. And there's a part on that game where you end up on an airplane, and the tyrant is in the back of the airplane. You have to get the Okay, so wait till you hear this. So you have to get his health down low enough, and then knock the block into him and knock him off the plane. Well, I didn't know I was going to be fighting the tyrant. I was like, yeah, I'm getting on the plane. I'm going to a new place. There'll be a save station. Great. I had no health items. I had no ammo. All I had was the knife. That's it. And so I defeated the tyrant in the back of the airplane with only a knife and no health items. To me, that was just epic. My friend and I stayed up till 2 a.m. doing it. So
yeah, that is without a doubt an epic maneuver.
And because of that, no longer will I overwrite my save. I used to do just one save file and overwrite it every time, but now I have like 3 or 4.
Yes.
In case something goes hairy, you can go back.
Believe it or not, I really truly believe that Code Veronica was one of those games that forced people to start doing that, because that game would soft lock you in so many areas. The plane is one of them, and that would be like almost insurmountable. Like, you did it with the knife. There is a way to do it with the knife. Would I go about that? No, I would have started over.
No, I thought about it.
Yeah, I got locked on that one too, and I was like, this is just brutal. I can't remember if I ever got out of that fight. I think I did, because there, like you said, there is a way you can, maneuver that box and knock him out of the plane with it. But oh gosh, that's a really good one to think about too. There's been a couple of times when I've been doing, this is more recently, but doing the Zelda lives, where I have had no hearts. It was actually like a half a heart left, and I came through clutch and beat Ganon. And like, it was just, people were like losing their minds. I was losing my mind, because I was like, how did I just walk away from that? Yeah.
There's no other hobby where you can get that feeling of, such accomplishment, and especially when you do something like that.
Yeah. That's kind of a more recent one. Gosh, there have been a lot growing up, and it's just kind of like, it's hard to even pinpoint, one of those. That's why I have to kind of draw from a more recent experience, and it was probably Breath of the Wild. A lot of times I was going up against an enemy, and I play that game like it's the original Zelda. Just give me a sword and a shield, and I'm just going to figure it out. Like, I don't items, I don't craft elixirs, I don't do any of that stuff. I just go in there swinging.
Yeah.
Somehow it works for me. So like a lot of epic fights and battles happen for that one that really were memorable.
That's excellent. We haven't talked about things that maybe you're still looking for. So you have an expansive collection. Is there anything on your short list of, if I find this today and it's a great price, I need it and I want it?
Little Samson for the Nintendo. That is probably my prized item that I want to get my hands on. The price for that is ridiculous right now. I don't know if you're familiar with that one, but yeah.
It is. Have you played it before?
I have not played it, because I want to save playing it for
when you get
my experience. But I've watched, there's another TikToker, Darth Dreads. I don't know if you've heard of him.
No.
Canadian fella. And he is actually I think a Tetris championship member, or team player. Cool. He goes to like legit championship matches and plays that. So most of his streams are Tetris. but he's also a speedrunner, and he has his copy that he grew up with of Little Samson. So like he was given it for
Wow.
his like I think it was like his like sixth birthday or something. So he's had it his whole life pretty much, and he speedruns that game pretty remarkably. I think he's broken some records with it. And I watched just some gameplay of it to see what the hype was about. And yeah, I was like, I got to play this game. This looks so
Really?
smooth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about it, so I just
Yep.
know it's a very expensive game.
Yep. It is said by a lot of people that it might be one of the best games on the system.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's just like one of those ones that came out at the end of lifespan for the Nintendo. So like everything was fine tuned at that point. It's kind of side scroller Mega Man-ish, but you
Okay.
can choose multiple characters. So, and
Okay.
each character has their own respective power that's like, can get you through the level either easier or with a little bit more difficulty.
You can switch like mid-level, or you just have to start.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So like if you get up to an area that you can't really figure your way through, another character might be the one that gets you through it.
Gotcha.
And a lot of cool, quirky implementations with things that all seem to work. Like it's
Gotcha.
kind of groundbreaking for that system, I guess, at the time.
Are you looking for complete in box items when you look? It looks like on your shelf, your NES games are all just cartridges, and I think maybe like your PS2 I see maybe down in the bottom, or some sort of long box.
So I have down the bottom's PlayStation 2 with their boxes, and PS3 and stuff like that, and Xbox 360. My Nintendo stuff, I do have some complete in box stuff. Do I like search after it? No, not really. I actually just did a video about that recently where I was kind of just discussing. I said I was going to anger a lot of people in the collector sphere about this, but I don't believe that the box and the manual should command the prices that they do. They're almost more than the games a lot of times now. And those were things that were meant to be thrown away. Like people didn't save the boxes for a reason because they weren't necessarily ever thought that they were going to be collector's item. The game itself is what's important. That's what you're playing.
Mm-hmm.
So that being said, I see the value in original copies of stuff. I'm not saying I disagree with that, but a lot of the times, like the boxes of games that I have gotten, they're beat. They're pretty beat up and worn. And I put everything I have behind a little plastic case also to give it a little added protection. But there's people that make quality reproductions of those boxes now that unless you're looking, you know exactly what to look for, you would not be able to tell. And I feel like if you want to display boxes or have your games stored in them for safety, like it's nice to look at a fresh box rather than something that's all beat up.
Yeah.
Obviously you could talk about the history of it because it went through World War III or whatever when it's all beat up, in somebody's basement. But I don't really see the appeal to those as much. I think I'm, going against the current with that belief. But
I think if it's a specific game, like one that holds a lot of memory to me and something important, then I'll say, man, it'd be nice to have that in a box and everything. But all of my cartridge games are just that; they're just cartridges, no boxes. And then, kind of like you, PlayStation, I just don't like having discs laying around because I feel like they can get damaged easily.
Yes.
So for PS1, PS2, Sega CD, Saturn, all that stuff, I have the box.
Yeah.
And if I don't have the box, I'll find a box. But
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's the funny thing about it. I have gotten, I don't know if you've seen the videos I've done, that I can grab one real quick right over here.
Yeah.
But I found this guy on Etsy that does mini boxes.
Okay.
So it's a mini version of the Nintendo box.
So it's just enough room, for the cartridge to go in.
Yeah, for the cartridge. You probably could be able to get the instruction manual in there because those are usually pretty thin too. If you had that in its own sleeve too. But like they come printed like this with a little plastic case for it already. And I think it's a great way to store the game. You still get that nostalgic feel of like, oh, hey, this is exactly what it looked like when I was looking at it in the store. The back of the box with the little preview images of the game. And I think that it's kind of a really fun way to display the Nintendo games that doesn't break the bank.
Yeah. I had a bunch of Game Gear games that I had no cases for or anything, and I wanted to be able to put them on my shelf. So custom game cases, I don't know if you've heard of them.
Yep, I've ordered from them.
Perfect, yep. So I got some from them. They did a great job, and they look great. So
yeah. And that's kind of like where I'm trying to. I want to, in a way, sway opinions on this and kind of like start like showcasing this more on my channel. Is that it doesn't necessarily have to be the original box if you want to showcase your games and, you know, have a good collection. Like, you can get a reproduction box and be able to display your games and be like, hey, listen, this is what it would have looked like. The game's original, but this is what it would have looked like if you were buying it at Toys R Us back in 1989.
I don't think anyone's going to unsubscribe to you because you have a box for a game that's not legit. You know what I mean? It's like,
the only way that they would do that is if I was saying that, like, you know, like, this is, if I was trying to pass it off as being the original, which I'm absolutely not trying to do.
Exactly.
I'm trying to just like say like, hey, listen, like, we could have our collections with some reproduction items. It's just like owning a classic car. Nobody has a classic car that's 100% original. You've got reproduction parts on it. So like that shouldn't completely crater the value of it. The game should be.
What is that philosophy? Is it Theseus's ship, where all the boards come from different places and eventually you replace them all and it becomes not the same board anymore, or not the same ship? Yeah. Which
is pretty much, you know, like, you see that with as time goes on, that's going to happen. Which is why I did a whole video that was doing the breakdown. It's like, really what we should care about when we're collectors in this area with retro video games is the chipboard and the chips.
Yeah.
You know, like, as long as that's the original chip that was the game's printed on, you know, we need to keep those, and everything else can get changed out, and that shouldn't change the value theoretically.
Did you get a lot of hate messages from that video?
I got a lot of people saying that it was dumb. Or are you kidding me? Like, you know, like, original is original for a reason. Like, that's where the value is. I'm like, I'm not saying like,
sure.
I'm not saying that that's not a thing. But what I am saying is that if the game, okay, if you have stadium events in its box sealed and it's not opened, okay, that game is probably going to go for $50,000 or more, you know? But if you have a loose copy of it and you want to get the case for it, you should be able to do that without somebody being like, that's wrong.
Yeah, I agree. While we are on the topic of controversial issues, what is your thoughts? And I think I know this because I've seen much of your channel, but what is your thoughts on graded games?
I hate them.
Okay.
I think,
absolutely every circumstance, no exceptions. There's no reason to grade a game.
No, this goes right back to what I said about stadium events. We'll just use a game that everybody knows. If you had Super Mario Brothers 3 that somebody found in a box that wasn't sold from Toys R Us in 1989 and sealed, that should probably be put behind a plastic shell and graded and sold for a high price, because that's super rare, right? We're not going to play that one because there's 1 million+ copies of Super Mario 3 out there.
Correct.
However, if you're grading a loose copy of Super Mario 3 and putting it behind plastic never to be played again, that's dumb.
I concur. I agree with you. I've seen posts for sales of like Burger Time, like the cartridge, and I'm like, why? Why are you grading this? So I have a few graded games, but to me, they're all ones that, like you said, I think they hold a significance to me from like a history of video game standpoint. So I have a Halo copy that's sealed, that's graded, because to me, that's like, you know, the pinnacle of Xbox is Halo. And then my Siphon Filter 3 flag variant is also graded because
that's awesome.
Because I want to make sure that was real. And to me, the only way I could verify that was actually real is if someone graded it. Now, I know there's people that say, oh, don't trust the grading companies, they're just inflating the prices, but I don't have any other recourse to say, you know, how do I know this is actually real?
Yeah. No, and that's the thing. There are a lot of reproductions out there, and it's getting sneakier, which is why I think I faced a little bit of headwind when I tried to talk about reproduction cases and stuff like that. And like, as long as they're labeled reproduction, that should be fine, you know. But like, it's when people are trying to resell and they're going and duping everybody and saying like, hey, I've got, you know, the flag variant of Siphon Filter, or what'd you say, Metal Gear Solid, was it? Or Siphon Filter? That's the one that has
Siphon Filter's the flag variant.
Yeah, Siphon Filter. And then you realize it's fake. Like, oh, you're just ripping people off. That's what's happening with GameStop actually right now. I don't know if you know that. No. A lot of people are printing bogus copies of the Pokemon games.
Oh, and are they selling them to GameStop? And then
they're selling them to GameStop, making a profit, and then GameStop isn't checking them correctly and is just putting them out there and selling people, saying that they're legit games, and people are going home and they're opening them up and be like, this is fake as hell.
That's crazy. Yeah, that's crazy, man. That's okay. Hell is okay. You can say
hell is okay.
No worries.
Yeah. But yeah,
Wow.
that's something, because I've gone to a few GameStops. I actually got a couple of deals right before the news broke that they were going to start their retro thing again, and I wound up picking up a bunch of PlayStation games and some Dreamcast stuff for a really good price. But yeah, there's a lot of counterfeits going for GameStop right now because they're not up to speed on checking them.
My
Like when
GameStop doesn't seem to have any retro games anyway when I go in there. So
it's a very sporadic thing.
yeah.
The
Yeah.
couple ones that I frequent in and around my area is it's rare. Sometimes you have to ask, hey, do you have any retro games? And they'll open up a drawer in the back. They're not even on display. They just open up a drawer and be like, yeah, this is what we got. Take a look at it.
Interesting.
Sometimes if you ask for that, they get really like annoyed too and like, no, we don't have it.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, let's go to some non-controversial topics, or well,
Okay.
I don't know. Maybe they will be. I don't know. What is your favorite game of all time?
Another tough question.
Everyone
said
says
this-
that, but let's say you had a fire in your house. God forbid that never happens to you, but you could save one game. What would it be?
It probably would be Resident Evil 1.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's the one that I have said a lot of times has been my favorite and probably is my number one game. And that, I think, was like, it all comes down to like the part where I was a teenager, I got a PlayStation, and it was, like just like the coolest thing ever that I got this like next gen system. It's mine. It's not my dad's Nintendo. Like I went out and specifically got this, and this is the game that I went out and sought after and got. So yeah, a lot of hours with that one, and got it. That's the game.
Okay. What about console? Replace that question with console instead of game.
Interesting thing. Love my PlayStation 1. Might save the Nintendo.
Okay.
Might go after the NES because that's the first one.
I think for
that I
me,
played.
it's Nintendo 64, and this is the reason. So Nintendo 64 to me is the first time you have the ability to play with 4 people. Okay, you have so many fun multiplayer 4-player games. You've got GoldenEye, you've got Smash Brothers, you've got Mario Kart, you've got Perfect Dark, and there were so many great memories on that system. And so
Yes.
Nintendo 64, 100%, no questions
Yeah.
asked.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah,
So
that system does have a lot of good games, and surprisingly, there's a few lesser known games that play exceptionally well on that. Operation Winback is one of them.
have it. Yep, love that game.
Yep,
That was
love that
one
game.
one of my favorites.
Yep.
A lot of people haven't heard of it, which
No.
is surprising, but it's a great game. You do a lot of voices as well, and you do a lot of characters. Did that start one day you were just messing around at home and you're like, hey, I could do a voice?
So I've always just been a goofy person at heart at the end of the day, and always trying to get either family members to get a laugh or whatever, and just general fooling around. So I kind of I've always been fascinated with voice actors in general, and the fact that they can pull these voices and do this stuff. So it kind of was something I always messed around with. Then I started playing the Zelda games and doing the live streams where on these older systems, there's a lot of text-based stuff where it's very slow. So I was just like, well, I'm going to read this out loud, and I'm just going to do the voices for how I think these characters sound. And whatever happens, happens. And that actually was one of the things that made Zelda and Coffee for my live stream kind of a lot of fun for many people, because they were like, why does this guy sound like Peter Griffin right now talking in Zelda? Or why does the Goron sound like Yoda?
Yeah.
So, and that's, I think, was a lot of fun. It gave me the chance to practice it even more, like my little voice acting hobby, because I could just open up and just like throw those out there. And if it didn't work, it didn't work. I just move on and not fret about it. So yeah, so it just one of those things that kind of grew naturally into it as I created content and streamed.
Take me through the process of making a video. So is this something you plan weeks ahead and then you film it, or you plan it the day of, film it the day of, all in one day, or?
It is all over the place. Sometimes there's ones that I will plan ahead and want to do. Those are usually the most edit intensive ones, where it's like, oh, I've got this whole plan for a character that's going to do this and interact. I tried actually even doing, like, a couple of recent videos I did was revamping the little skits that I've done before, and I was going to make it kind of like a 80s or 90s sitcom with a laugh track. Have realized that I do not have the free time like I once did, and those are extremely hard to do. So I've done a couple of them, and I think I'm just going to have to pull those back and put those plans back on the back burner. When it comes to doing the games, like, do you remember Super Mario for the original Nintendo? Those are all day of. I literally just walk up to the games. I'm like, well, all right, which one am I going to film today? And I'll just, do the intro, do the outro, and do some filming with it, and just kind of run with it.
Very
So,
cool.
yeah.
So you do a lot of streaming too, and I know. So when I first started watching you, you were on Twitch. I know you no longer stream on Twitch, if
Yeah.
I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
You do TikTok and as well as YouTube, correct? Can you, briefly tell me about why you made that switch or where you find the best streaming sites to be?
So we touched on this actually a little earlier when I was talking about the OBS style streaming. I started with TikTok, and that was the only platform that I made any content for at first, was TikTok. And as I grew on that and things kind of changed on that platform, not for the better, I was like looking into different avenues to kind of grow my following or still make it more enjoyable for people, and just to see what the editing styles were for those platforms. Like Twitch is completely different. It has all these emojis and stickers and stuff that you can do with it. And the interactiveness of the Twitch stream kind of drew me into that. Like there's a lot of stuff that the viewer can do to kind of interact a lot better that TikTok didn't have, or YouTube at the time. So what I wound up doing was streaming on all three for a little bit, which completely wore me out. Having to set all that up and make sure I was streaming on three different platforms, trying to read three different chats at once. I was just like all over the place. And I'm pretty good at multitasking on like those different things, but it just wore me out and I didn't feel comfortable doing it anymore. I really enjoyed it at most when I was just pointing the camera phone at the TV and streaming that way. So that way you didn't really see me. I was just this, anonymous voice that guided you through the journey of Zelda or whatever game I was playing, with some jokes here and there as I read the chat. So yeah, that's it was a little bit of burnout that started happening, and I just had to, draw it all back in. And I still do YouTube and TikTok, but those are managed completely different ways. And YouTube is only the Zelda and coffee stream right now. And anything else that I feel like doing is just taking the camera phone and putting it up against the TV.
So my experience on Twitch, because I do some streaming on Twitch, has been that I get a lot of bots or people that I'm not sure are even real. People asking me to join their Discord, and I don't have Discord. I don't have any plans to ever get it, but there's a lot of that happens on there. I've done YouTube once or twice, and then I also have done Instagram live videos, and the only problem with those is they only allow you to stream for an hour, and then it automatically cuts off. So I definitely think, YouTube is probably the way to do it. And I'm not just saying that because we're posting this on YouTube right now, just so everyone knows that.
Enjoy YouTube the most out of all of the media that I use right now. I have for a long time. YouTube's been around a long time also, so like they know what they're doing.
Right.
But yeah, there's a couple of things I want to see them make a little bit better with shorts. I heard it's in the works right now, so in the near future, like that's probably going to happen, which is exciting. They're going to add, I think, 3-minute videos for shorts, which will be good, especially for the content that I make. But yeah, definitely the best platform to make content for is YouTube. Everything else now is getting weird.
Yeah. And TikTok, I don't know. I've heard that there might be a TikTok ban, and that might not be around. So who knows? So
that's kind of in a preemptive way. I have the largest following on TikTok, and what I try to do is kind of like make announcements to people like, hey, like I am on YouTube as well. Sometimes, like what I'm doing is only posted to YouTube so you can see more stuff there. So I'm trying to entice people, because of the impending possible ban, that, like in case anything happens, I'll still be making content. It's just going to be somewhere else. And people are kind of like picking up on that now, because I think there is a lot of fear that platform is going to get taken out. Will it actually? Probably not. I think there's just too much at stake now with the incomes for people and everything. I mean,
right.
I think it was like $15 billion, was just from incomes that people made off of TikTok. So like, that's a huge number. Like you can't take that away from like the American public that's trying to survive right now.
Yeah. Well, a fun fact I learned by talking to, so my latest episode I posted just earlier today, a guy from Canada, Chris, who owns a place called Moonshine Gaming, he told me that in TikTok, they actually can't get paid. There's no monetization for it there. So I found that very interesting.
100% true. It's pretty wild because Video Game Restoration, who I'm good friends with, he's a fellow Canadian there, and he told me a while back, he's like, you can get money off TikTok. I was like, yeah, like it's not much, but like I can get a couple bucks off some of those videos that I make. He's just like, he's got double the following I do, and he's like,
no money to show for it. Yeah,
well,
maybe.
Yeah, well, he lucked out because he started getting sponsorships from a couple places, so he does get a little bit now.
Okay.
But yeah, TikTok is just, they're not doing anything for Canada.
Yeah, absolutely. You did talk about Zelda and coffee. So what is your schedule in terms of streaming so that people watching this know?
So pretty much Zelda and coffee happens. It's the one stream that I do, and I try to keep the most consistent. Saturday mornings, somewhere between 9 and 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I try to start in that block hour. Is when I stream, like, pretty much all the time. I have a Discord where I do make announcements when I am going to stream, or if the stream is going to be missed that day. If I do miss it in the morning, I try to make it up that night around like 9 o'clock at night, Eastern Standard Time. But yeah, so I have to try to sequence the schedule with my time off, and that's kind of a tricky thing to do. So the one thing that I tried to make the constant was the Zelda and coffee stream, because that was my most popular stream I did. Otherwise, like, it'll just be kind of like, if I'm feeling like it, I'll pop on for a Thursday or Friday night and play some original Nintendo games and stuff like that, just to showcase those. I used to stream a lot more. I used to stream like 4 times a week. Yeah. I haven't been able to really do that for a while now. And it gets to the point too, like when you're doing all this other stuff, it's like, okay, I could be streaming, or I could be making a video for my channels, or I could be sleeping. Like, I think sleeping might be the thing I got to do right now. Yeah. Because I'm kind of worn out.
That's a good point, because like as I'm doing some of this stuff, like I'm posting stuff on Instagram, I'm streaming on Twitch when I can. I've started this podcast now. I'm like, I got to pick one of these and just kind of focus on it and really put all my time and effort into that.
Yes, and that's what it comes down to, and that's kind of how I said before. I was streaming on all 3 platforms, and then I got burnout. I was doing that, and I was doing my little video. I was trying to get my website up, so I was building a website. I was streaming on 3 different things. I'm making content. I was trying to make content every day, which that doesn't happen anymore either. And I was trying to refurbish these video games and streaming while doing that too. So I would do breakdown videos and stream that and try to film that. And I was just like, I got to kind of just pick one thing and just go with it, because I can't keep up with this anymore unless I just don't sleep. And obviously you can't do that. We're not robots.
Yeah. So to follow that, do you have any advice or suggestions for people that are looking to get into collecting or even streaming or anything like that?
The best thing for streaming is that you just have to keep doing it. Don't worry about your numbers. That's the hardest thing that any streamer deals with, is the constant looking, did somebody watch this? Is somebody going to watch this? I'm worried nobody's watching this. You just literally have to start. And for a while for me, it was just talking by myself, which is good. It's good practice for you as well, too, if you're a streamer, because like you just act like somebody's there and just have a conversation and just talk about stuff. And eventually you will draw those people that'll be like, oh, what's this guy talked about? And then they'll start coming in, and then you can engage with them, which then helps things grow more naturally that way.
How long would you say that took before you got kind of that bigger following?
I got lucky, I think, because it was the pandemic. Mm-hmm. I think that's really what it was. I redoing it again, and like by doing YouTube and starting YouTube, I didn't get many followers to jump over. That's another hard thing too. If you're streaming on different platforms or you're bigger somewhere else, people on one platform will not follow you on another platform unless they really, really like you. Like, so nobody's going to jump ship from one to the other which is awesome. Thank you. But a lot of the more casual people will not jump ship, because I've had a coworker, he followed me on YouTube also. He's like, I don't watch you on YouTube at all. I never will. He goes, it's TikTok or nothing for me. He's like, that's the only one that's on my phone. I was like, all right, well, appreciate that. But yeah, so it's a slow process. It takes a while. It takes a while to get to that magic number where you can start streaming on some of the platforms too. But it's persistence. It is at the end of the day. You just have to make sure that you're having fun making the content you're making. And don't stress about it. Don't think that you have to make it a certain way for people. Like, if you're going to be successful, it's going to be successful. But the main thing is you have to just have fun with what you do. And I've said again and again on my streams where I've gone from highs and lows in my streams as well. Like, there was a low point where I was getting 5 people viewing my streams again, where I was once at 10,000. during the pandemic. And I was just like, I don't care. Like that's totally fine. Like 5 people, I can have a nice conversation with 5 people. 10,000 people, it's a very hectic chat, and I'm trying to catch things and still talk to you. Yeah. But as long as somebody's enjoying it like I'm enjoying it, that's the point. You know, it doesn't have to be something that takes off and becomes, you know, a whole thing on its own, as long as I'm having fun doing it. And that's how I'm going to just keep going with my streams until I decide that that's it, I'll close up shop. You know? Yeah, and it's all about having fun. I've known people that have just really wrecked their mental health over it too, which is kind of a scary thing, because it's just like, nobody's watching me anymore. Like, what's happening? This is terrible. And they've taken a mental break from streaming just to kind of recuperate and kind of figure themselves out. So
I think that's really solid. Yeah, really solid advice for sure. That's this podcast. You know, I started it not thinking anyone was going to want to be on it, you know, but I've met some really cool people. I've had some people that I never would have met before. You know, it's a lot of fun. So this is something that I think I'm going to keep doing and keep trying to get more people. But what about collecting in terms of, so you mentioned streaming advice, and then what about for collectors? People who don't want to stream, they just want to collect.
If you're collecting, don't collect. I don't know. It's kind of hard, because that's one of those things where it's to each person in their own, you know? My thing is that collect stuff that you are actually going to cherish. Don't just do it just to collect.
I feel like you've watched all my previous episodes, because that's what I say every time. You know, you should collect things you want to collect, right? If, you know, someone posts online, oh, this game's so cool, it's so popular, but you don't like it, or you have no purpose, like you don't want to play it, don't get it. Like, there's no reason to. You don't need to spend $3,000 on a game just because someone else has it. So
yes, exactly. And like, that's just like going for clout at that point, which you're not actually really collecting anymore. Like, you want to get something that you're going to enjoy. Like, every time I pick up a game in here or look at one of my like figures or something like that, it's like, I got this. This is really cool. Like, I'm like, this is really cool. I have this. Like, hopefully somebody else I can show this to, and they come over and they can appreciate it just as much as I can. But, you know, like, that's exactly it. And like, and just being able to use those things also, like, throw that game in. I'm not afraid, like, okay, this game may cost a lot of money, but I'm going to throw it in anyway and still play it, because that's what it's meant for.
Yeah. Full transparency. When I first started, I was, I got to get as many games as I can, you know, and I would look on eBay and there'd be lots of 70, you know, Super Nintendo games. And I'd be like, I don't want to play any of these, but I need it. Yeah. And so I went through a period. So when I was in residency, I had some games. I didn't have a lot. And then once I finished and started, you know, becoming attending and out working in the real world, and I was making money, I started doing that, buying as many games as I could, kind of rebuilding my childhood collection. And then I got to a point where I was like, this is stupid. I'm not ever going to play all these. So, you know, I can show you my shelf at some point, but it is much smaller than yours. But everything, you know, on it, I've played or plan to play soon, and are games that I'm interested in. So,
yeah, mine, like I said, like, I do have a large backlog of stuff, but I plan to play all of them.
Like, I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to diminish your collection, but I was just, you know.
Yeah, no, but that's just, I'm agreeing with you 100%. Like, it's all going to be played at one point, and that's what the whole thing is. Don't collect just to say you have it. Collect it because you want to play it. And like, my big thing is, I'm looking forward to the point where my kids are older that want to sit down and like, oh, let's do Contra together or something like that. I'd be like, this is what I've been waiting for.
Yeah, or GoldenEye, and you can show them, you know, what it's like to play as Oddjob.
Exactly.
I'm going to be Oddjob, and they'll be like, okay, who cares, you know?
And then just be like, oh my God, what happened?
No, that's definitely great advice. So your social accounts are all mattynewy, right? So mattynewy on TikTok and Instagram. Okay.
Yep. TikTok, Instagram. I think Instagram might actually be the mattynewy because
okay.
Yeah. But yeah, mattynewy on TikTok and YouTube for sure.
Okay.
Matty's Retro Games is my website. So if you want to find you know, the games that I was talking about, that I do have some of the games for sale, and my merch is mattysretrogames.com, which I actually post every once in a while, my little Hulk Hogan impersonation commercial.
Oh, okay. I don't think I've seen that one. That you post that on your TikTok, or?
Yeah, it's on TikTok. I think I posted it just fairly recently too, so that's always a good one. It's like done like an old VCR recording too, so it has like the skips and everything in it.
Okay, that's awesome.
But
definitely appreciate you being on the show. And, everybody make sure you follow Matty. He's got some cool content, funny stuff, great guy. And we'll see you guys next time. Again, thanks for coming, Matty. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me.